You don't trust AI to talk to your leads because what if it says the wrong thing? What if it misses a serious buyer? Or what if it just glitches? That fear is real. The problem is most AI agents are deployed without being tested properly. In this video, I'll show you how to test your AI agent inside of N8N so that you can trust it fully before you let it talk to a single prospect. So the reality is that when you're testing an AI agent, it works great while you're testing, but the real world brings edge cases. Users start interacting with it in ways that you could not have predicted, and all of that breaks the logic that you have within your prompts. When you're building your agents in N8N, it's really hard to tell how it's going to respond to all of these very weird edge cases that you only see once you put it into production. So how do you actually test for this? Well, you use this functionality in N8N called evaluations. So what are evaluations in N8N? So I'm here on the documentation page for evaluations in N8N, but I'll go over how to set this up for a very specific workflow that we built for a client very recently. And I'll show you how to test this so you can get an agent to be production ready. But this is the evaluations documentation. So very simply, evaluation allows you to check your AI agent step, which is the core component of your step. So it allows you to test the inputs and outputs of your workflow against a variety of test cases. And how you do it is you have some sort of a data set that you can create to have sample input messages to send to the AI and to have certain outputs. We have expected intent labels that we expect this AI to give. We have expected routes that we expect this user or this AI to give, to assign to that lead. We expect it to understand its readiness and to suggest the right offer for our business. So for all of these different cases, we want to be able to test, including things like just check out my page, right? When someone else is trying to promote their services within our DMs, within the Instagram DMs, we want to ensure that we have the right classification to say, we don't want to do anything here. This is no operation. We don't need to reply, right? We don't need to qualify them for a particular offer as an example. So all of these test cases give us a way to check whether our AI agent is comprehensive and whether it can handle a variety of edge cases that can get thrown at it in the real world. So as you can see, we've set up 38 test cases for this particular AI agent, and I'll show you what this looks like. So this is the agent itself, where the goal of this agent is to listen to Instagram DMs. And when someone sends a DM to our Instagram page, from ManyChat, it triggers this N8N workflow. Now this workflow reads the message, it classifies the user into a variety of fields. So this is an example output of the AI agent. So we have multiple classifiers in this agent. And this is important here when we're building our test cases. And so I've set this agent up in a way that we have structured outputs. So for each field, we have a few possible options that this AI agent can set. As an example, for the action, we have 3 possible options. We have reply. So we've set up this agent to have very specific classifiers with just a few different options for each field, right? So within this AI agent step, we have it set to output something that looks like this. So it's a very structured JSON output, and it has its specific fields that we have specified. So this is our AI agent step. Now it is set to output a structured JSON format with specific fields. Now these fields are classifiers, right? So it's a way to classify the lead and classify the actions that we need to take afterwards. And so this AI agent is set up to be quite simple to test, because in order for us to check whether this AI agent is performing as we expect, the primary thing we want to know is it taking the right action, right? Is it replying, or is it handing off in the right circumstances? Is it correctly classifying the intent of the lead? Is it going to route it to the correct offer that we have? Is it understanding the readiness of that lead? Is it suggesting the right offer? We are not asking it to evaluate the quality of the response itself, because we trust that if these components, these outputs are as expected, then we expect a large language model to be able to handle that properly. That much we can trust, right? What's really scary is if it hands off to a sales rep when it's not supposed to, or vice versa, or it suggests the wrong offer for that particular person. If that person is looking for structured learning in some sort of a online community or one-on-one coaching, and we sent them some sort of an asynchronous course, that's not ideal, right? So we want to make sure those things are handled properly, and that's all up here in these classifiers. And so in our evaluation, which I'll show you how to set up in just a second, we will be able to check whether the outputs of these fields are what we expect. So hopefully that makes sense. That helps you understand what evaluations are and how we are going to be using it in this video. Once you've set up your agent and you are looking to get into testing, the first thing you need to do before you start building out this evaluation workflow is to create test cases, right? So what you want to do is you want to look at your agent and you want to think through, what are the things that we want to test for, right? First, what are the expected inputs and what are some edge case inputs that we should think about? And so for me, what I've done is I've written out 38 test cases, and I've used AI to help me with this, but you want to make sure that if AI is writing these test cases, so you're checking the quality of the outputs. So what we have here is I've written input messages, including just some hi test AI and some emoji. So if all I send is an emoji and then the keyword, I'm also testing for that as well. I'm also testing for things like check out my page. And so I'm passing in all of these input messages as tests, right? And so for each one of those, I'm creating columns for what is the expected action that the AI is going to output, right? In this AI agent step, we have an action, either reply, handoff, or no operation. And so I correctly classify what I want the AI to do in each of these operations. And so I have the expected action. In this case, these are replies, these are handoffs. So you want to make sure you fill out that column. So as I mentioned earlier, the way that I'm choosing to evaluate the quality of this AI agent response is not by reading the reply text, but by checking whether it classified the lead correctly, whether all of these things are correct. They're as intended, right? Because these things are binary. They're easy to check, is it correct or not? Checking whether the reply text is good or not, that's not a binary decision, so it's a little bit more difficult. In this video, I'm going over the binary evaluation process, right? To check for whether it classified it correctly. Because when it classifies it correctly, typically it will give a response that is good, that is accurate, that's acceptable. So that's a key thing to keep in mind as to why we're choosing these fields. So again, I'm filling out all of the expected outputs for each one of these input messages. So I have the expected action, the expected intent primaries. So I'll explain what this is. So within the system prompt, I have told it to classify the user by a primary intent. And so the primary intent options are, if it's A, that means they're exploring or learning. If it's B, they want structured education. If it's C, they have a specific problem or question. If it's D, they want one-on-one help. If it's E, they're ready to talk or book now. If it's F, they just want content or knowledge. And if it's U, it's undecided. So those are all the options for the intent. I know what those options are, and for each input message, I'm saying, okay, what is the expected intent? Is it A, B, C, D, E, F, or U? And that could be tough, right, for the AI to understand. So that's something we really want to make sure that the AI is correctly classifying. So we fill that column out. We also fill out the expected route in the exact same way, right? What do we think, based on our knowledge of how we want this AI to work, what should the expected output be here? Same thing with the readiness, same thing with the offer suggested. Now, if you see already, you can probably already tell, I have extra columns here for the actual action, right? I have the expected action, the actual action. I just want to keep this here so that when I bring this into N8N, it already has the right columns to then populate. And then there's action match, right? If you remember, I mentioned that all of these classifiers are binary classifiers, right? So if the action is correct, that is a match. If the action is not correct, right? If it's reply and it's supposed to be handoff, then it's not correct, then it's not a match. So we want to have a column for us to output into this data set a match or not a match, right? So we just want to leave empty spaces for a match for each one of these classifiers. So the action is the first classifier. Then we have the intent. We want to make sure the intent, we have a match column as well. So we have actual intent and then intent match. We have actual route and then route match, actual readiness and readiness match, offer suggested and offer match, right? So for all 5 of these classifiers, we have those 2 extra output columns that we don't need to fill anything in right now. So once we have this ready, we've created something that looks like this. You don't necessarily need a test ID. I just have this in this video. You can ignore that and you can just go straight to the input messages. in the first column for your CSV. So once you create those test cases, what we're going to want to do is click download CSV. I'm just going to hit save. Boom. So we've just saved that. Now what we're going to do is come into N8N. And so within N8N, you have workflows, and then you also have data tables. So if you go on this top nav bar, you see workflows, credentials, executions, and then data tables. Data tables is the rightmost option. You want to go to data tables and then click create new data table. We're going to do this together. So we're going to say AI Instagram agent demo. And I'm just going to upload this CSV that we just created. And I'm going to select that my CSV contains a header row because in our CSV, we have headers. I'm going to click create. And then what we're going to want to do is select the data type. So it's already given us a selection. We're just going to want to review what this import step has pulled up. So it's pulled out the column name and the data type for each column name. So we can change the column names here if we'd like to right now. In this case, we don't need to. We can just go ahead and click create. And so now we have something that looks like this. So if you're at this step, you've gotten very far already. You have the data table. Now we just need to set up our evaluation workflow. So all of our data, our test data is in N8N. So within this evaluation workflow, first, this is a brand new workflow, right? You're going to want to use the evaluation. There's an evaluation node with a set of specific actions. So you can start with a trigger event on a new evaluation event, which essentially is just when you fetch a data set row, you're going to want to go from a specific data table. In our case, the data table is going to be AI Instagram agent demo or whatever you just named the data table that we created. You're going to click execute step and you're going to see, boom, we got the first row. We've brought it into our workflow. Now we are good to go. All right, so that is our trigger. Then we have a node with the operation of set inputs. So what this set inputs node is doing, it's doing exactly what it says it's doing, is just setting the expected inputs. And so for all of the columns that we filled out in our Excel, we're going to just bring them in here. We're going to name this. We're going to name this input message and then drag this here like this. And then we're going to get something that looks like this, right? So the intent, offer, readiness, route, and the action, all of that is done. So let me click there. That looks good. Now from here, I've brought this over from our actual production AI agent. So the one that we are looking to deploy and we're just looking to test, we're bringing all of that here. In my case, this business facts is important because it's passed in as context into the system prompt of this agent. So that is why I've also brought in this node as well, and I call it business facts. So both of these kind of make up the system prompt together. So I've brought all of this over exactly as is, and I paste that here into the evaluations part, right? So the prompt will be the same that you've just pasted over. And then what we do is we run as we paste this here. So once the AI agent step is complete, we actually get into evaluating, right? So there's this node called check if evaluating. That is one of the operations here. We're simply checking whether we're running an evaluation or not. In this case, this whole workflow is for the evaluation, so we can just continue as is and leave this normal branch empty. As a side note, there is a use case for having the normal branch be your actual AI workflow and having an evaluation set up branch here. So this actually does have a lot of use in a different sort of evaluation process, which is evaluation once your AI agent is deployed. So once it's deployed and it's being used, it's talking to your leads live, then you're going to want to use this check if evaluating, and you're going to need this condition in both sides to be filled out. In this case, this evaluation is used before deployment, right? So we are doing checks before we ever want to deploy it to make sure that it is up to our standard. N8N refers to this as light evaluation, which is pre-deployment, as opposed to metric-based evaluation, which is post-deployment. So right now we're doing light evaluation in this video. And if you'd like to see how metric-based evaluation works and how that's set up and how to plug it into your production AI agent, I'm happy to make another video about that as well. Okay, so we've done this evaluation node. We've ran it through. On the evaluation branch, we have this one node called set outputs, right? So our evaluation branch pulls the output of the AI agent node, which looks exactly like this, which just says action, intent, primary. So this is how the AI agent actually classified our inputs, right? So now we need to use that to set the outputs on our data. So essentially it would fill out the actual columns, right? Actual action, actual intent primary, actual route. That is what the AI actually classified it as. We have actual action, actual intent primary, actual route, actual readiness, and we are just passing in the particular field here. So we're saying output readiness, output route. So we're passing all of that here. And then we're running this. So that is setting our outputs. Then we have our expected and we have our actual, and those are filled out up to now. Now what do we need to do is actually check whether they match or not. Very, very simple, right? And so I'll show you how we actually categorize this, right? So we have this node that is the set metrics operation. Now within this, we have a metric. There are many ways to evaluate the correctness of this AI agent, right? You could do some sort of a helpfulness score, right? If this is a customer support agent and you just want to help it answer the question, you can score it 1 through 5. You can also do a correctness score 1 through 5 to check how correct this AI agent is. You can do some sort of a string similarity. You can create your own metrics as well if you'd like to define your own metrics. I think for the vast majority of use cases for AI agents, you'd want to use categorization. Categorization, I'll just read this. Does the actual match the expected? If the actual output matches the expected output, return 1. Otherwise, return 0. Very, very simple. That way, it's very easy for you to check yes or no. These things can get a little bit more subjective based on how you train it and based on how you set the scores 1 through 5. So I'd recommend just keeping it simple and doing categorization. For each classifier that we have, remember we have 5 classifiers. In this one, we are just classifying the action, right? So we have what is the expected answer? We have reply for this, first input that we have in our data set. In fact, this input I can tell you is this, right? This is the input message. The expected action is reply. So here's the expected action. We can see that it's reply. It's coming from right here, this node. It's the expected action right here. The actual answer is reply, right? Now we set that metric to be named action_match, right? Which is the exact metric that we've named here, which is action_match. So we're just going to execute that step, and then boom, we've outputted this that says action_match, and it's given us a score of 1 because these two things match. Reply matches with reply. Same thing for the intent primary classifier. What is the expected, right, from our inputs when we fetch the whole data set row? What is the actual? And then the intent match, right? So does it match? In this case, it matches. So we have a 1. What is the route, right? Same thing. We're setting that metric for the expected route versus the actual route. In this case, we're going to route them to discovery, which makes sense given the question that was asked. Now we have a readiness, right? So what is the expected readiness? Readiness match is also a 1. Offer suggested. This is our last classifier, and we are suggesting the alumni community for this person. And that's one of the things that we offer in our business, right? In this sample business. So we have all of the metrics now that have been created. And now we're going to do one big upsert, which is basically the data table that we have here within the N8N workflow, actually update it with all of the right columns, right? So we are going to pass in the test ID, the input message, the assertions, the response text, and pass in the match scores. The reason we're doing this upsert is so that once you run the evaluation, you actually want to be able to export that evaluation easily so you can look at it on a different screen. At first, you don't need this upsert in order to run this evaluation. You can run this just fine. It's just if you want to save the score, like the output table with everything there, and you want to be able to export it and look at it later, that's why we have this upsert here. So it is very useful once you're running the evaluations. So you just want to define what inputs go into each one of these rows, right? And that is your upsert step. Now, this is about to be the real beauty of evaluations, is that you have all of these test cases, right? You can create 100 test cases if you want, and then you can just evaluate them all at once. So you can just click run test, and just like that, it is running. And you can see what the outputs are here. And these are some of the past tests that we've done. You can see the scores that we've gotten are relatively high. With across all test cases, our offer is 86% of the time it matches. 89% of the time the readiness matches. The route, intent, and the action are all similar, right? So the beauty of this is that you can run all these test cases at once. So we're going to give this a minute and just let it finish up, and then we'll go ahead and check our scores. Okay, awesome. So we just finished up this test. We see that it just completed today, and we can see how many prompt tokens this took overall, how many total tokens, and we can see how much time this took as well. So here's what's important to us, right, is these matches, these match scores. And so we can click into this run and we can see, okay, we have 37 test cases and these are our match scores. And for each test case, we can see which ones failed and which ones succeeded. Overall, pretty good scores. You have at least above 84% for all of them. And action matches the highest, which is good. And so now what we would want to do is export this locally so that we can do some easy filtering on this and then look at which test cases worked and which test cases didn't. And for the ones that didn't, we can adjust our prompt within the workflow. So let's say we find out that for a specific offer, the conditions for, suggesting that offer might need to be tweaked a little bit. We can come in to here and find the offer suggested. And let's say for the free masterclass, we want to say that, okay, if they specifically mention free, just offer this one. This is just a very basic example, but basically, once you know how it's working across a variety of test cases, you can very easily change the system prompt, make a few tweaks, run it again, run that whole evaluation step again, and then see how the results improve or maybe even go down a little bit. So you want to make sure that you're making changes to your prompts to only improve the scores. And then once you feel comfortable with the scores and confident that even on the ones that it fails, it's still doing okay because it's still giving a good response and classifying it in a way that's similar to how a human would, then you can go ahead and deploy this. Again, one thing I want to stress here is as you're creating your test cases, to make sure that you actually check the expected outputs yourself. Don't just let ChatGPT run this whole thing and create all these test cases, create 100 test cases, but then not look at them yourself, because that's actually doing you a disservice. There could be a lot of errors in your expected results, right? So you want to make sure you are manually checking the expected results so that your match scores are actually reflecting what you want this AI agent to behave like, how you want it to respond. So again, make sure you're checking your own test cases in this type of a workflow. But once you run something like this, then you can be completely confident that it can handle test cases like all of these, right? So you can be comfortable deploying this and having it reflect your business and represent your business. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully this was a helpful video and gets you more confident in deploying AI agents for your business. I'll see you all in the next one.